Hi, it's your local dead girl here to discuss the Tokyo Videos of Horror anthology, also known as Yamidoga. This is created by Kazuto Kodama, and the Tokyo Videos of Horror anthology consists of around hour-long segments as mini movies. These are generally found footage. They are relatively low budget, and the quality tends to be up and down. Like, you really don't know what you're going to get, because from story to story the quality can be really great, or it could be something really, you could find it on YouTube, maybe like the kind of stuff that you'd find on YouTube, little clips or short, like, wow, wouldn't that be fucked up or what. For this video I'll be covering the first two volumes. So to get right into things, let's start with the first Tokyo Videos of Horror section with Late Summer Night. This focuses on a couple recording their time playing with fireworks, and they happen to see this young girl run off into the night, so they decide to follow her. Of course, they end up finding the girl's dead body, which, not great, and there's little information showed about how she was possibly killed by her father, but it's not really clear, because her ghost seemed to be calling for her as if scared of someone else. There's not, like, the comprehension of it is kind of rough because the subtitles were not the clearest, and it was a bit lacking for that, because, like, it was disturbing, it was sad, but not really much content to understand or get anything out of it. It's more of a, once again, is this fucked up or what? Next, The Passerby. This is a group of friends on a fishing trip. They're enjoying a nice little barbecue. They decide to return home, but they end up in a car accident on the drive back. Footage from within the car shows them just messing around, and closer inspection shows this strange little ghostly girl peering at them and getting inside the car, making it seem like she might be responsible for their deaths. She's just peeking in the window. It's like, it's just a bit silly. Like, I laughed. I don't know, it's very much a situation of, okay, was this fucked up or what? Once again. Visiting Grave. A man and his boss head into the mountains on this strange request of their client, because they're filming a video for him, or her, or them, where they seek out a grave to perform a strange ritual exactly at 2 a.m. on the dot. These sort of rituals usually are at a very specific time. I know 3 a.m. can be considered the witching hour, but for this 2 a.m. ritual, this involves cutting along each corner of a string with paper wrapped around it, and you have to do so with a sickle. And then a bunch of other detailed steps follow, and it ends with a prayer. The boss, however, becomes very, very sick after he begins this praying, and he collapses to the ground. The other man with him tries to check on his boss, but his boss continues to act really oddly, so he, like, slowly rises back to his feet without responding, and then he just runs off into the woods. So the other man wanders around in the dark. He's, like, confused, he's afraid, his boss is acting weird, and he starts seeing these strange floating heads coming out of him. The heads are really funny. They're just these floating masses that are just appearing before him, and it's not really discussed that much because he freaks out and he books it back to his car, which, fair enough. Around this point, he does find the dead body of his boss within the car. Like, he opens the door and he's just not moving in there. So that freaked him out, probably. A little bit more research is then proceeded to be done upon it on mostly matters like curses. Invoking the name of a religious figure in the wrong location can bring misfortune and death upon someone, apparently. There's this idea that something might have happened to the boss, and he might have been set up, because the other man who was employed by him mentions how he thinks the boss's wife had been very happy when his boss died, and that was partially because she was mistreated by him, because he was physically violent with her. This one really, really reminded me of Nori the Curse. There was this really strong emphasis on rituals and these curses and the performance of them, very, very detailed too. I think this was absolutely the best part of this collection of short stories, and it's the only one of them worth watching again. There's also Go Game. So Go Game involves two children playing a game of Go with their grandfather. The grandfather leaves, and a ghostly face appears out of the wall, and it kind of looks like the Teletubby son. It's very silly, and it's not very interesting in the sense of anything besides what is that? Because no one in the video is still alive as a fire burned down the home with all of them inside of it, except for the owner of the videotape. Like I said, some of them are much more fitting as a YouTube clip. And then there's one last segment for this, which is called Revenge. Revenge basically follows a pregnant woman being brought before two men because she's very, very badly in debt. The men attack her, force her to take pills, and attempt to make her use a knife to cut herself open to film a disgusting video. After that is a lot of violence and cruelty. It's disgusting. It's horrible. And then afterwards, the woman's bloody corpse is left on the ground. And a very, very fake looking fetus is sort of attached to her via this umbilical cord. And the men, of course, realizing what they've done, they try to take the body away to dispose of the evidence. The baby's body then proceeds to pour out with this dark energy swirling out around it, this massive just black dark energy, and that energy chases the men into the bathroom, where it takes revenge on them, killing them. It basically frolics about the whole bathroom, running all over the walls. You can see all the little footprints. I don't know how to describe whatever I watched with that one. I was uncomfortable. It didn't really match the supernatural theming of the other stories. It was certainly supernatural with a weird fetus baby just running about, but it was sort of like... It was definitely, like, closer to stuff like what I know of the guinea pig series to be, which is not something I'm very interested in, but somebody else might have a different take on it. All in all, this was a very awkwardly combined set of short stories, and I didn't really enjoy this one very much, so I'm kind of glad that when I started, I'd actually started with the second of these stories. The second volume begins with a story called Deja Vu. This story follows a man and a hired reporter heading to investigate a bridge known for its suicide attempt. But the hired reporter begins to act strangely, as if she'd been there before. Eventually she finds this cave, and within the cave there's this word painted across it that looks to be translated as hell. Eventually they do come back to the bridge in the nighttime, and the hired reporter continues to act very oddly. She slips into a pair of red shoes that were left behind by somebody who had found their way off the bridge, and she seems to be in a trance-like state, as if she's possessed by this person. She wanders off into the night, and the man tries to find her, so eventually he retraces his steps back to the car, where he does in fact find her, but these strange sounds start to happen as he gets in the car with her, and the sounds are like hands smacking against the car and shaking it all over. And then after all that begins to happen, there is this strange figure's face caught on the camera. Later on, the hired reporter walks upstairs to her apartment, as seen from the camera feed, while still wearing those red shoes, and she makes her way all the way up to the top of the building, where she throws herself off of it, continuing this cycle. This story was very memorable, as it had a feeling somewhat reminiscent of works like Nori the Curse, as I've said for other stories. And there is this sort of troubling history behind the location, especially with the context of how terrible the situation is in Japan, as there is a very dark and tragic history surrounding their suicides. And that does add this sort of air of mystery and even tragedy to it. I really do think it was well done. The Onsen Hotel. Two girls are at a hotel enjoying a hot pot meal together. There's this strange headless figure behind them. Little else is really known about it. It was a very, very short story, something closer to something I found on YouTube, and there's not much else to be said about it. It was a little creepy, but far too short. The next story is The Stalker. There's this young woman, and she's troubled by a stalker bothering at home, so she contacts, I suppose, some local law enforcement, possibly, who uses a camera to record evidence of what happened. This shows some very bothersome and realistic scenes of harassment throughout her home, and they're very difficult to watch, like, actually a bit upsetting. There's some verbal harassment as somebody screams at her through her closed and locked door. Her door is beaten so hard it shakes. And then this person pushes these paper dolls through the mail slot, and she goes to open the dolls later, and they contain blood within them and this unsettling writing in the center, sometimes including details such as her day-to-day life. The young woman returns one night to her apartment, and it seems like somebody had broken into it. She looks around, and eventually she finally gets a look at her stalker. The strange part is her stalker looks just like her, even wearing the same clothes as she's wearing. The young woman, in this moment of realization, is flung back with the camera falling next to her, and that's the end of the video. Later, it is said the woman is now in a mental institution as she suffers from dissociative identity disorder, and apparently she remains in there making paper dolls. But it does make somebody wonder, was she suffering from dissociative identity disorder? Or due to the supernatural nature of these short stories, was it actually a doppelganger who took her place? That unsettling sort of unknown really does add to the story and makes it one of the better ones. The next story is a family. It shows a home video of a family, only for the baby to pass by a strange and ominous face on the ground. The face bears a slight resemblance to the one seen in the first story, so that could be reused resources, or it could be relevant. It is apparently said the family committed suicide after the video was taken, which would add to a common theme. This story is very short, though, and despite its ominous feeling, it didn't do a whole lot for me, and it really has me confused on the fate of the baby. Like, what happened to the baby? Well, there's not really much of an answer. That's all there is to the story. The next story is a school. There are these two young men returning to their old abandoned high school. It's going to be demolished very soon, and they decide to film it as they walk around. The young men stumble upon a classroom with endless writing on the chalkboard, just all over it covered, and they find it pretty creepy. But even worse, there's this voice calling them over the intercom, and the voice tells them to come to the science room. Once again, this place is abandoned. So the young men decide to check the broadcasting room, but they don't find anything. So they head to the science room, where they look around in the dark, and eventually they stumble upon a horrendous sight. Their old teacher's been hung from a noose in the old school, his neck straining from the weight, and looking disturbingly long and broken, a completely unnatural state. One of the young men wants to leave, but the other one holding the camera berates the dead teacher, having always hated him. The teacher's body spits something disgusting all over the camera, and it gets on the man holding it. The body falls forward and hits the ground, the dampness of the abandoned school having turned his flesh rotten, as it had been there for quite some time, and this made it impossible for the teacher's head to remain upright. This also added to the strain to the neck, which came to a pretty disgusting picture. The woman interviewing the young man who's talking about this gets the address of the cameraman and decides to check up on him after, with a hidden camera within her bag. Whenever she knocks on the door, the cameraman answers and has these strange keloid scarring all over his face, and right behind him, the ghost of his old teacher can still be seen haunting him from within the doorway. This story had a very unsettling setting with an abandoned school, as there has actually been a couple of true crime cases covering very similar locations and discoveries. And the sheer details and the disgusting factor of how the corpse looked really made for a fascinating story. Overall, this was definitely one of the better entries of the four I've watched, and I honestly really liked it. It was a vast improvement from the first volume. Thank you for watching. Your local dead girl is out for the night.